If you're old like me, I'm sure most will remember the epic battles of the 90s between the Chicago Bulls and the New York Knicks, which featured tough, physical games both in the regular season and in the playoffs. And as a kid, it was some of the most fun and entertaining basketball to watch, and I loved it because the Bulls always got the best of the Knicks, with the exception of that one year when Jordan retired. And since then, I've always just kind of hated the Knicks, and I think that's probably the case for most Bulls fans, and vice versa. Most Knicks fans really hate the Bulls. But for years and years, these teams have really been, for the most part, pretty bad and irrelevant since the 90s, and really more so the Knicks, at least, because for the Bulls, they at least had some successful years, while the Knicks have won all but one playoff series since the year 2000. But either way, both teams have been fairly underwhelming since the 90s, with a few exceptional seasons. But as we get further into this season, it is clear that both of these teams are relevant, with the Bulls currently 4-0 and the Knicks 3-1, and maybe, just maybe, we can start to see this rivalry come back again, with both teams facing off tonight against each other at the United Center, and I figured we can talk about it. So what's going on, everyone? You were listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. So I'm gonna try and put my biases of hating the Knicks and loving the Bulls aside in this video as much as I possibly can, even though we all know that that's hard to do. But what I will say is that regardless, this is going to be a fun matchup for a few historical reasons. The 90s rivalry aside, you have former coach Tom Thibodeau, who I'm pretty sure still hates the Reinsdorfs, coming back to town, and you know he's going to want to beat the Chicago Bulls and beat them badly on their own home court. Then of course, the Chicago native and legend among Chicago basketball and Derrick Rose going against his former team, and you also have Taj Gibson coming back, another member of the D Rose era Bulls. And of course, it's also Joakim Noah night at the United Center, which is going to be a lot of fun for fans. I'm sure they'll get some kind of picture between Noah, Rose, Tibbs, and Taj. There's even talk that Kirk Heinrich, Carlos Boozer, Omir Asik, Kurt Thomas, those guys are all in town as well, so it's going to be a fun night. And then on a smaller level, you also have former teammates in Evan Fournier and Nikola Vucevic going against each other after being traded from the Magic last season. Not only that, but you have these two teams that are incredibly scrappy on defense, but also high-octane offensive systems operating in transition as well. And with all of these factors in mind, it's going to make for a pretty epic battle. At least that's what we hope anyway. Now, I talked about this a bit in my weekly preview video, but I'm going to go into a little more depth here for this game specifically, especially after what we saw in the game from the Bulls against the Raptors. Now, the starting lineup for the Bulls hasn't been announced at the time of this recording anyway, but we can assume that it's going to be the usual starting five that we have seen so far this season. It was announced that Zach Lavine is questionable to play in tonight's game, as he has a small ligament tear in his left thumb, which initially it was said that he was going to be playing through, but upon further review, the Bulls have then listed Lavine as questionable. My hope is that by him playing through it, he doesn't aggravate it further, but we'll have to leave that to the medical staff to see, who I'm sure are going to be cautious, which is why they have him listed as questionable. Patrick Williams also is still playing through some pain from his injuries, which might explain why he hasn't looked himself so far this season, but in any event, all signs point to the same starting five for the Bulls tonight. Now for the Knicks, you've got their main starters of Kemba Walker, RJ Barrett, Evan Fournier, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson. So, like the Bulls, a bit on the smaller side, with the exception of the big man in the middle. Now, when I look at these matchups across the board, I'm not all that concerned about the backcourt. Lonzo is a better player than Kemba Walker at this point in his career anyway, and will be able to limit Kemba's ability to drive to the hoop. While for Lonzo on offense, Kemba, who has never been a good defender, won't match up well against ball. RJ Barrett is no match for Zach Lavine, again, assuming that Zach plays tonight. And while Evan Fournier has been pretty impressive thus far for the Knicks, averaging 19 points per game and playing solid defense as well, I don't see DeRozan having too much of an issue scoring against him. But where I do see some challenges, and really my biggest concern, is in Patrick Williams locking down Julius Randle. Randle continues his dominance that we saw last season with his ability to score, already averaging over 25 points per game in the Knicks' first 4 games. But what has been more impressive from Randle that we didn't see as much last season, and again, I know it's early, but it's with his defense. He's averaging 1.8 blocks per game, while he's never really been known for his shot blocking and rim protection, averaging just a half a block per game for his career. On top of that, he's also averaging a steal per game as well, and his defensive rating is the highest that it's been in his career thus far. He's still crashing the boards at over 11 rebounds per game, and like we saw last season, he turned himself into a nice playmaker, averaging 6.5 assists already this season. So again, is Patrick Williams going to be able to limit Julius Randle from taking over the game? Now, I know Patrick is still recovering from his injuries, but if he defends anything like we saw him do against Scotty Barnes and Precious Achiuwa against the Raptors, the Bulls are going to be in for a long night where Randle is going to get to feast. The Bulls are definitely going to need a ton of help defense on Randle from guys like Lonzo Ball and even Vucevic to ensure he's not getting easy looks and boxing him out in the paint from grabbing offensive rebounds. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw some more minutes coming from Alize Johnson or even Javonte Green to have them assigned to guarding Randle while Patrick Williams is on the bench. I also would like to see a little more Tony Bradley. I know he hasn't performed that well thus far, but the Bulls could certainly use his rim protection in a game like this where they are facing an all-star in Randle. We have to remember, this is really the first test of the season for the Bulls going against a better team, and you have to be ready to pull out all the stops against someone like Randle if Patrick Williams isn't up to par in guarding this man. The other matchup I think will be a little more challenging but not as concerning as the last one is Vucevic on Robinson. Vucevic obviously is the better player, but Vuce, not only has he started a bit slow this season, but he's also historically not done well against strong rim protectors and strong offensive rebounders, which Robinson is both of those. You don't have to really worry about Robinson as much when it comes to his scoring since he's not really known for his offense, but for Vucevic, who has already struggled mildly on offense, he's going to have himself a tough night getting through Robinson, who is a very strong defender. Now, we always talk about the Bulls' depth and what we have coming off the bench, but the Knicks have some depth of their own with, of course, Derrick Rose acting as their sixth man. He's off to another solid season coming off the bench. They also have Emmanuel Quickley in his second season and Obi Toppin, the former lottery pick that is starting to find some strides in his second year after having a bit of an underwhelming rookie season. The Bulls will have their hands full against D Rose, as I'm sure Rose will have an extra step in his game knowing he's playing in front of his hometown and will want to put on a show. As I mentioned before, I would love to see Io on Rose, even if it's only for a handful of minutes, just to see the hometown kids go against each other, although I'm pretty sure Caruso will mainly be on Rose coming off the bench, while Lonzo isn't guarding him in the rotation. Now, my keys for this game, and again, some of this is probably a little obvious, but one is locking down Julius Randle. He's the Knicks' best player and primary scoring threat. You let him go off and the Bulls are going to be in for a long night. The other is the Bulls have to limit their turnovers, especially in the fourth quarter, which they have struggled with. You can get away with committing bad turnovers against bad teams like they have in previous games, but not against a strong team like the Knicks, who will make you pay on offense. Right now, the Knicks are actually one of the best offensive teams in the league, surprisingly. The other key is hitting your shots, and I know it sounds basic, and it is, but so far this season, the Bulls have missed far too many easy buckets around the basket, some of which being wide open, and you can't have those types of mistakes against good teams that have strong rebounders. Make sure those easy attempts in the restricted area are going in, take high percentage shots, and don't just settle for outside shooting. And then finally, the last key of the game, and this is based on the assumption that Zach Lavine will be playing, and that's go to Zach. I know lately the Bulls have been running with DeMar a lot and having him, take the bulk of the shots, and it's worked, right? But when you have a matchup like Lavine playing against RJ Barrett, this is the time for Lavine to take advantage and feast on the offensive end against a younger player who isn't the best defender. Give him the ball, set screens for him, and let him take over. The same kind of applies to Lonzo Ball, actually, because the Knicks don't have the best perimeter defense overall. Guys like Lonzo and Lavine should be able to get easy looks and easy penetration to the hoop going against Kemba and RJ Barrett. Now, as I said in my weekly preview video, I do think the Bulls will win this game to go 5-0 before losing their first game against the Jazz on Saturday, and I think the Bulls will likely win this game in a close one, winning by 4 points. I'm going to go with a final score of 106-102, and I'm expecting a strong performance from both Zach Lavine and Derrick Rose. I'm sure the United Center is going to be hyped tonight, not only because it's the biggest game thus far for the Bulls, but also because everyone is going to be excited for Joakim Noah night. I want to hear your predictions, though, for this game. Let me know what you think the final score will be, who's going to win, and who will have the biggest game of the night. Let me know in the comments. I'll have a live chat for the game here on the channel as well as on the Discord, which, by the way, make sure you join the Discord. It's a great place to talk Bulls basketball with the community. It's free and always will be. The link to that is in the description. As always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.